Hello everyone, this is Zeke again, and I will be your dedicated product engineer. And today we're going to discuss more about the settings of your Komodo client security and also how to deploy it to your endpoints. Okay, so first to get started, we need to have your license key activated. So if your product success manager activated it already, you can just go straight to the settings, subscriptions, and then list of licenses, and then click add new license. So you'll just have to paste the license key in here and then click add. As soon as it is added, you will see IT and Security Manager Premium, but this one is a non-premium ITSM, which is what you will have as well before you add the trial license, right? But as soon as you add it, you will have one ITSM, which is non-premium, and an ITSM that is premium. So the non-premium is your basic edition or the unlimited 1-year IT and Security Manager license key. So you just have to remove that as soon as you have added the trial license provided to you by the Product Success Manager. Okay. So if the license key hasn't been activated yet, you have to go to accounts.komodo.com/mdm by activation code, and then fill out this information, put your license key up here, and then click continue. So as soon as it is activated, you just get the license key, put it right back here. Okay. Now, if you want to take back your ITSM Basic Edition after your trial license key expires, you can go to your accounts.komodo.com page and then log in your account. And then you just have to go to the services, ITSM, then this will show you your ITSM Subscription Basic Edition. So this is your unlimited subscription for 1 year. Alright, so you just have to copy this key again and then put it right back here. Okay, so once you have your license key all set up, you can now go ahead and deploy your Komodo client security to your endpoints. So that's just a few easy steps. You just have to go to the device list, select your devices. You can select multiple devices at once, but you also have to be aware that, of course, when you deploy it here, it may consume a lot of bandwidth from your client's network, right? So maybe you can do it by batch, like 5 or 10 devices at a time, because it may slow down the entire network if you deploy it to all of them at once. All right. So now here I have selected multiple machines. I click install or update packages, then install additional Komodo packages. So I can just check the install Komodo client security option here, and then choose my reboot option if I want to force the reboot, suppress, or warn the user about the reboot. After I click install, I can check out what happened to the installation by going to the actual device and then click MSI installation state. Right. In my case, I haven't been able to deploy it here yet, so I don't have any status. But if I want to go back to my other device where I deployed it already, like this one, under the MSI installation state, I will see the Komodo client security here, and it was installed successfully. Right. So you will only see 3 states here: pending, failed, or successful. So once you have your Komodo client security enrolled or installed to your machine, we can now go by applying the profile to the device, which can be 4 different ways if you apply it manually, and then you can also apply it by setting up a profile as a default. So currently I applied a default profile in here, which is the demo hardened Windows profile. But then again, you can apply it in 4 different methods of doing it: by applying it to the actual device, to the device group, to the user, or to the user group. Right? So let's get into the profile. Okay, so the very first layer of defense of our Komodo client security is the antivirus. So this antivirus gets the signature from our server and then checks the file if it's part of our known bad or our known good list. Okay, so this is the one that also removes the cryptic malware that I showed you when we did our advanced endpoint protection demo. That's why I made the exclusions from here. And talking about exclusions, let's open up the file group variables. So this file group variables is very important, especially if there are specific path or files that you want to be excluded from our layers of protection. Remember, we have 7 different layers of protection, and it might block something that you don't want. So that's why we can, create exclusions in different ways. And the flexibility of our exclusions was made possible by these variables. Okay, so I have a whitelist variable right here, which I can call anytime when there is a layer of protection where I want this list of applications to be excluded. Okay, so later on I'm gonna show you how I can use this for every layers of protection. Now, going back here to the exclusion, again, we have 3 different ways of doing the exclusions right here. One is by the path, meaning the location of the file. It can be a folder, like for this one, everything under recycle bin. This one, everything under the Komodo Internet Security folder from the program files, and anything under the prefetch that has a file extension of .pf. All right. The excluded application refers to the specific file. So like this one, it is referring to the search indexer.exe, and I also made my own exclusion here, which is for cryptic. Then the groups. So I called here the variable whitelist, so I can exclude these 2 applications. So if I have multiple applications or a path right here that I want to be excluded, I can just simply list it down right here, and it will be applied to all of the layers of protection of my Komodo client security. Okay, but normally, we don't do exclusions to the antivirus layer. It's just up to you if you want to make the exclusions here and to other layers of protection, so you won't be having any problems for for some applications that you really trust. Okay. So another thing is about the real-time scan. So if you don't want to give any alerts to your client, just make sure that this is disabled. If if you enable this, this will give them a pop-up alert that will make them decide if they want to quarantine or block the threat. Okay, but some other admins prefers to not to enable this, because it may just cause some panic from the end users, and you will just start receiving a lot of calls from them because they're getting pop-ups or something like that. Okay, and then as for the scans, you can actually schedule your full scan, quick scan, and recognize file scanning, and you can also define your own type of scan. Okay, so if I go back here, I can go to the schedule tab, select if I want to do it on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. And there are also some conditions here, like run only when computer is not running on battery, run only when computer is idle, turn off computer if no threats are found at the end of the scan. So you can actually use these conditions. Okay. All right, so let's get into the next one. Let's go to the HIPS. So HIPS stands for Host Intrusion Prevention System. This is disabled by default to the optimum and to the standard profile, because it may slow down your machine if you have this enabled. And for the HIPS, if you're going to test Komodo client security, your endpoints, I have to set your expectation that it may slow down a little bit in the first few days, because it is going to try to learn every applications that you've got into the system. Right? So it will try to adapt all of the behaviors of your application, and if something changes from there, if an application comes into your endpoint, that's the time that it will do its actions based on its behavior. So you can also make your rules here. Just like what I said, you can just now call the name of the group that we created, which is the whitelist. There. And then you can use a rule set to allow the application, Windows system application, isolated application, limited application. So these are predefined rule sets. But of course, you can always create your own rule set here, or you can also just go by here, add rule set, and then provide this access rights or protection settings like run an executable, inter process memory access, things like that. Okay. So once you have your rule set, you can go now to the rules, add rule, call in the name of the variable, just like what I did earlier, and choose your rule set from this list. Okay. After that, that's it. You're done with your exclusions with the hips. Okay. And for the protected objects, if there are specific objects that you would want to be protected by hips, meaning no one or no application would be able to modify or change anything from it. So let's say you have a cryptic in your machine, and you have a specific file that you want to be protected by hips. Anything that the cryptic will try to do to that file, to that protected file that you have listed in here, will not be allowed because it is inside your protected objects of hips. So basically, there's no application that can ever change anything from there. So no one can encrypt that, basically. So it's not just a file. You can also protect a registry key, COM interfaces, or protected data folders. So as for the registry keys and COM interfaces, you can also make your variables here. We have a variable for COM and for registry. All right. So once you're done with the hips exclusions and the settings, also, by the way, I forgot this one. For the hips, you have to switch it to training mode. Okay, so just to give you an idea what's the differences between the three. Training mode is trying to learn everything, as in everything that you've got in there. All right, regardless if it's an application that is certified by Komodo as good or bad, it will learn it. Okay, so one thing that you just have to make sure before you switch this to training mode is you have to make sure that every applications on that machine is clean, is something that you really trust, because hips will try to learn those application and then trust it from there, from that point, until you switch it back to a different mode like safe mode. Okay. On the other hand, safe mode is going to trust only those application that is certified by Komodo. So if you have some applications on your endpoint that is not certified by Komodo as trusted, then that application will also be monitored by hips. It will also monitor it by its behavior, which may not be good, may not give you a good result, because it may end up giving you a pop-up about this and tells you that this is a malware or something like that, or it's doing some malicious behavior. Okay. All right. So paranoid mode basically tries to block or monitor everything, even the safe mode, or the applications that has been marked by Komodo or rated by Komodo as trusted. So that's the paranoid mode. Alright, so that's for the hips. The next is the virus scope. As for the virus scope, you don't actually have to change anything from here. There's no exclusion that you can do here because it follows a standard behavioral scanning analysis. So it is only checking an application by a standard behavior standpoint. All right, so you can monitor contained applications only. You can also monitor the application that runs even outside the containment. All right. So, but then again, you don't really have to change anything from here. You only have three options. You can just leave it as it is. Then we have the firewall. So for the firewall, we all know that this layer of protection is the one that protects you from the application that tries to go in and out of the network, right? So let's set Microsoft Outlook as an example. So if you have Microsoft Outlook in your machine and it tries to send something, right, you can apply specific rules to that action, or you can also apply rules to the application itself. So when you create a rule right here and you try to, for example, I'll call for the whitelist still, and then I apply the rule set. So I can call in the web browser, email client, FTP client, allow application, or block application. Okay, so I can just block this application if I wanted to, or I can also just call the email client rule set. For example, let's just say this whitelist variable is Thunderbird, the Microsoft Outlook, and all other email clients. So there's a specific rule that we have here for email clients that allows this and that. So let's get into that one for the email client. Right. So it allows access to the loopback zone. It allow outgoing POP3 SMTP request, allow outgoing DNS request, and ask all the remaining requests. So if basically if there is uh, another protocol that it is trying to use, like IMAP, in this case it only allows the POP3 and SMTP. So if it's trying to use an IMAP protocol, it might ask you, or it might give you a an alert or a pop-up. Okay, but of course it's up to you if you want to make your own rules right here. So these are the default rules that we have right now. But yeah, again, if you want to create rule for a specific application, you can do it from here. Okay, and we also have what we call global rules. So this global rules allows you to create a rule for a specific protocol and ports. It is not per application. So let's say we go here. I block TCP UDP. Let's say the direction is in or out, and the destination port is 995. So this means that if I try to send something and it goes to the 995 port, which is basically sending something, it will block this request. So it would not be able to go through. So if I'm sending something to a specific IP address, 192.168.1.10, it will also be blocked. All right. So this is basically, referring to a rule of the addressing and the port numbers and the protocols that it uses. Okay. And we also have what we call port sets. So we can just call in the HTTP ports, POP3 SMTP ports, or privilege ports, and you can create your own port sets here when you start creating your rules. Like for example, if you allow TCP UDP in or out for this port range, or sorry, set of ports. So you can call those ports. So it's like a variable as well that you're defining port numbers for this particular rule that you're making. So let's say I'm allowing all HTTP ports. Okay. So application rules get the rule sets. Global rules gets the port sets. Okay, that's how it is. Next, network zones. We have network zones and block zones here. Network zones just basically lets you list down all the network where it is safe, and block zones allows you to list down the IP addresses where your endpoint cannot access. So let's say you block 10.10.1.1. So when a laptop goes into an internet cafe, for example, and it tries to access that IP address, it would be blocked. Okay, you wouldn't be able to connect, and that's like in the network zones, you are allowing, if you list down the 10.10.1.1 in here, it's like you are whitelisting that IP address for this particular endpoint, or in which this profile is applied, basically. All right. And then for the firewall setting, we also advise you to choose training mode when you start using the firewall, because it's the same with the training mode of the hips. It is just not uh, it is just not learning the behavior of the application. Unlike with the hips that it's trying to learn and adapt everything, this training mode for the firewall do not block, or yeah, because there are certified Komodo certified application, and we mark them as trusted. So that's what you do in safe mode. But in training mode, you're not doing that. You're not blocking or whitelisting anything. That's just basically how it is. And you can also create your own custom rule set, which is again being pulled from here. Okay. So yep, that's all for the firewall. Then we have the file rating. So for the file rating, you actually don't have to change anything as well, just like with the virus scope. So you can just leave it as it is. But just so you know, file rating is the layer of protection where all the decisions of Valkyrie is being submitted. So this is checking the file by its reputation from the Valkyrie. So because if we don't have this and something has been sent out to the containment, and containment forwarded it to Valkyrie, then Valkyrie provided a verdict, then the next time I run that application, it will just go back to the containment and repeat the same process. So that's why we need the file rating in between, so it would not rescan the files that has been scanned by Valkyrie already. Okay. Next, after the file rating, we have, of course, the containment. So after the antivirus, the hips, the virus scope, the firewall, and the file rating, the containment will now start, opening a virtual environment for the unknown files. Okay, so you actually don't have to, or this is where you usually do the rules, or the exclusion. So it's just the same concept as what we do in the antivirus layer in the hips, in the firewall. You can just click add rule here, select the action if you want to run virtually, run restricted, block, or ignore. Then you can click edit for the criteria, check your file group, and then your target. Okay, so you can just call in the name of your variable, whitelist, and then just click OK. And of course, if you have specific things that you want to check out here, like the created by processes. So if, for example, cryptic is trying to call on the Microsoft Word. So if it's created by a specific process, you can just type in the name of the file here. So you can list the file here, or I mean, type in the path here of the cryptic. So this means that anything that was created by the cryptic malware will be in this action. Okay, so it's either you allow it or block it. Okay, and also same thing for the file created by users, file origins, file rating, and file age. All right, so as soon as you created your rule here, this is very important for the containment. You always have to make sure that this rule is at the very bottom. All applications that is rated as unrecognized will run virtually. We need this at the very bottom because everything that is on the top of the list will be the first one that it reads. So if there are rules below that, it may overwrite whatever rule that you have on top. Okay, so we always have to make sure that this all applications unrecognized run virtually is at the very bottom, because we want this to be the last rule that will take place to the containment. Okay. So as for the settings, we also have exclusions here for files and folders and registry keys. So what this is doing is, if you have a file that is in the containment and it tries to access a specific file or folder, it will normally open it up in a containment. Okay, but if your contained application tries to open, for example, the document folder, and it tries to save something in there while it is inside the containment, that file will not be created within the virtual environment. It will be created inside your actual operating system, right? Or basically outside the environment. So that's just if you want to allow a specific application to access the or specific files or folders. Okay. Same goes for the registry keys and values, but this is not being used normally. Okay. All right. So after the containment, we have the Valkyrie, which you actually don't have to change anything. You can just keep the way as it is right now, but as you know, Valkyrie is where we do all our behavioral scanning analysis, which makes us much better than our competitors, because normally when you do behavioral scanning locally, it will consume a lot of resources. Unlike with us, our behavioral scanning is being done in the cloud. Okay, and our Valkyrie is not just plain behavioral scanning. We also have our human experts backing it up. So if our behavioral scanning fails, we have our human experts to manually analyze it. That's the Valkyrie. Right. Then, in addition to this acts, or I mean this Komodo client security features, we have the client access control. So client access control allows you to put the password protection for your Komodo client security and Komodo client communication. So if someone tries to change something within your Komodo client security settings, it will first ask for your password. Same goes if someone tries to stop the running process or uninstall the application. It's going to require for either an administrator, a local administrator password, or your custom password here in ITSM. Okay. So after the client access control, we also have external devices control. So this one basically allows me to block specific device classes. So if I will have to block all USB storage devices, I don't really have to go to the BIOS for each one of the endpoints and then block the USB ports. All right. Here I'll just have to click add and then block USB storage devices. And all other device classes are listed here already. Okay. And of course, if you can block a device class, you can also do some exclusion. So from here, the exclusion, for this exclusion, you cannot call in the name of the variable because we're talking about the device ID here. Okay, so what you can call, or what you can do here is to just manually type in or copy and paste the device ID that you want to be excluded. You can also exclude a group of devices because the format of the device IDs is like a directory. So basically, you can just go to the directory where it identifies, for example, if you are excluding all the SanDisk USB storage devices, you can do that from here. You just have to, remove one part or the last part of the directory and then put an asterisk on it, which means that all the devices which has this brand will be excluded. Okay. All right. Then after the external devices control, we have the updates. So as for the updates, this is not referring to patch management. This is not referring to the Windows updates, not the Komodo client security update, not the ITSM update. This is referring to the virus definition updates. So these are the updates that the antivirus layer needed. Okay, so it is downloading the signature from our server, and then our antivirus will later use it. So if there's a file that comes in, it will know if it's part of the known bad or known good list. That's this update, and you can schedule this on when you want this to run, and you can also specify a server where the update will be downloaded. So once you have it on a server, you can just basically distribute it to all of the endpoints under your server. And lastly, just about the UI settings. So it allows you to, show some information, like for example, the client security client tray icon, the communication client tray icon, like this. So if you want to hide that, you can just uncheck this and the desktop widgets. Right? Okay, so that is basically all for the entire POC process of the Komodo client security. If ever that you will have some questions, just let me know. And our next demo is about the service desk. If ever you're interested with that, we can start with the service desk demo on a different day. So I thank you so much for your time again, and I hope you have a nice day.